Hello and welcome to another episode of dougformative. On today's episode, I'm going to show you how to recreate this Olympics logo design that I did here. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I watched a movie on Netflix the other day about an Olympic hockey team from the year 1980, and I was curious how difficult it would be to recreate those interlocking rings, and I thought that would make a great tutorial for people to use on Inkscape. So let's go ahead and get started. When you first open up Inkscape, you can decide whether or not you want to keep this page here. If you want to get rid of it, you can go to File, Document Properties, and then under this menu, uncheck the box that says Show Page Border. I like to keep it there as a reference, so I make sure that I don't make my designs too large, because if they're way too big, sometimes the program will freeze up on you, and you definitely don't want that to happen. So let's go ahead and close this out. And in order to get this page out of the way, I'm going to click the mouse wheel and just drag it over to the side, but it'll still be there as a reference when I need it. Now, the first thing that I did was I downloaded an image of the Olympics logo, and I imported it into here so I could use it as a reference. I have it saved to my desktop, so what we're going to do is minimize this window here, click and drag that Olympics logo, and just click OK. Now I don't need the logo to be that large, we just need it there as a reference for a couple reasons that I'll get into in a little bit. So now that's out of the way. Now the first thing we want to do is create one of the rings, and then once we've done that, we can duplicate the ring and space them out however we need to. So we're going to go over here to our circles and ellipses tool, and we're going to hold Control, click, and drag that out at a 45-degree angle so we get our perfect circle. Now what we want to do is create an outline around the circle and then just get rid of the middle. Now we can do that by coming down here to the palette, and it doesn't matter what color we use right now because we're going to change it later on. So we're just going to hold Shift and click on another color, and that gives us our outline. We want to get rid of the inner color of this circle by coming over here and just clicking on this X. Obviously that is way too thick of an outline compared to the original Olympic logo, but I want to make it a little bit thicker than the original one because I'm putting a gradient design into the rings just to give it a little bit more of a modern look. Now, in order to shrink down the outline here, we're going to go to our Fill and Stroke menu, and under Stroke Style, first we want to change this to pixels instead of millimeters, and for the width, right now it's set at 75. I'm going to see what it looks like at 30. That's a little bit better, but I think I want it to be a little bit thicker than that, so let's try 40, and I think that works better for the design that I created. Alright, so now we want to duplicate that. Let's go to our Select tool here. Now we hold Control and hit the letter D, and there's 5 rings, so we need to duplicate that 4 times. So I'm going to hit D, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we can click and drag each individual ring off to the side, so we can start to line them up the way that we need to. Now, the first thing we want to do is get 3 rings in a row like this, and we want to space them, or at least get them as close to the original design as far as how far apart each of the circles are, and I think that looks pretty good where it's at, but we want to line them up so they are perfectly even. So go ahead and use the Select tool, click and drag over those 3 circles. Then we're going to go to our Align and Distribute menu and click Center on Horizontal Axis. Now those are perfectly aligned, but we want to make sure that the spacing is even as well. So with this same menu open, you're going to click right here where it says make horizontal gaps between objects equal. And now those are equally spaced apart. So what we need to do now is line up the other two circles. And honestly, I think the best way to do that is get rid of those, and then we're gonna just select two of these rings because the spacing will be even. We're gonna hold Control and hit the letter D to duplicate those, and we're gonna click and drag those down. So now what we need to do is group the top row of rings and the bottom row of rings together. So we're gonna group these by holding Control and hitting the letter G on the keyboard. So those are grouped together now, and we want to do the same thing for these top three. So with those three selected, hold Control and hit G. Now they're grouped together, and what we want to do is select all of them, and we want to go up here and click Center on Vertical Axis. Now we know that they are perfectly spaced evenly. And now we're going to take these two bottom rings, hold Control so they stay on that same vertical axis, click and drag them up to, I think that is pretty good. Yeah, a little bit lower. Yeah, that's pretty good right there. That's about what we want. And now we want to ungroup them. There's two ways you can do that. You can go up here to Object and click Ungroup, or there is the keyboard shortcut Control Shift and the letter G to ungroup. Now just click off to the side so nothing is selected. And now what we want to do is get the colors of the rings. And that's the other good thing about having this reference here. You can click on this first ring here, and then if you hit the letter D on your keyboard, you get the dropper tool, and then you can come up here, and you can't just click on the blue ring because that will fill in the circle with blue like that. So let's Control Z to get rid of that. You want to fill in the color of the outline, so you have to hold Shift and then click the blue ring, and then you get that same exact blue color. We're going to do that for all of the rest of the rings, so I'm going to hit S on the keyboard to select this other one here, hit the letter D for our dropper tool, hold Shift, click on the black ring, hit S on the keyboard to select the next one, then hit the letter D for your dropper tool, and hold Shift, click on that red, and you notice it's a little bit of a darker red than the red that I had here already, so I want to keep those colors consistent. Hit S again to select this next ring, hit the letter D, hold Shift, and then click on the yellow ring. Hit S one more time, click on this last ring, hit D on the keyboard, and come up here, hold Shift, and click on the green ring. Alright, so now we've got our colors. What we want to do now is create the illusion that the rings are interlocking like that. Now if you notice on this design, they kind of have gaps here where the rings are overlapping. I don't like that. I would rather the rings be touching in those overlapping areas. So I'll show you exactly how I'm gonna do that. First, we need to make sure that these outer rings are a path in order for them to interact properly with one another. So I'm gonna click and drag over all these, and then I'm gonna go to path and then stroke to path. Now we want to take these first two rings, the blue and the yellow ring. Let's click on the blue ring, hold Shift, then click on the yellow one, and we want to get this shape right here where the two rings overlap. And how we do that is first you're going to hold Control and hit the letter D to duplicate them. Then you're going to come up to path and hit intersection. It's remaining the same color. You can't tell what it just did. So let's come down here and just click on another color. We'll just click on red for now. And you see what it did? it created that shape just where those two rings are overlapping. Now what we want to do, instead of doing that process for each of these rings, we're just going to duplicate those two shapes and then place them over all of the rings where they're overlapping. So let's go ahead and hold Control, hit the letter D to duplicate that. Now you can hit H on the keyboard to do a horizontal flip. Now you can hold Control, click, and drag these over onto the next set of rings. Now do the same thing, Control D, hit letter H, click, and drag these over. And let me zoom in to make sure that it's lining up properly. Alright, good. Alright, now one more time, hold Control, hit the letter D, then the letter H to horizontal flip, then click and drag this one more time. Zoom in just to make sure that it is locking in. Now we can look over here and make sure that these are checked, so it should lock into place. There we go. That's what we wanted to see. So you know that it's perfectly even. Alright. Now the next step that we need to do is we need to break these objects apart where these interlocking rings are. And we're going to do that by clicking right over here and just dragging over that. And you notice that it's only highlighted those interlocking areas. So to break these apart, you're going to come up here to Path and then click Break Apart. And now they are each their own individual objects. Alright, so now with this original Olympic ring logo that we have here, you see that the yellow ring is overlapping the blue ring right here. So we want to make it look like the blue ring is behind the yellow ring down here. And we're going to do that by clicking on this object that we created here, holding Shift, click on the blue ring, go to Path, and then click Difference. And what that does was that gets rid of that same shaped area of the blue ring to give you the illusion that the blue ring is behind the yellow ring. Now we need to do the opposite of that for the yellow ring by clicking on this other shape here, holding Shift, clicking on the yellow ring this time, then going up to Path and hitting Difference. So now it looks like that part of the yellow ring is behind the blue ring. We need to do that for each of the other rings. So let's start with this next one here. We need to get rid of this portion of the black ring. So we'll click on that shape, hold Shift, click on the black ring, Path, Difference, unclick that, go to this next shape, hold Shift, click on the yellow ring, Path, Difference, unclick, and just keep doing that for each of the rest ones. We'll click on this shape, hold Shift, click on the, we actually need to click on the black ring again. So click on the shape, hold Shift, click on the black ring, go to Path, hit Difference. So now the green ring is going in front of the black ring. Now on this next one, we're going to do the opposite. Click on that object, hold Shift, click on the green ring, Path, Difference. Alright, so the green ring is overlapping in front of the red ring here. So we're going to click on that shape, hold Shift, click on the red ring, go to Path, Difference, unclick, click on this last shape, and hold Shift, click on the green ring, go to Path, Difference. Alright, so now we have the interlocking rings exactly like it has in the original design. Now we don't even need this here anymore for the reference since we have exactly what we need. So if you select that object, you can just hit delete on the keyboard to get it out of the way. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And in order to create that gradient design that I have moving through these rings, what we're going to want to do is create a rectangle shape. So just click and drag this out. We don't want an outline on that, so just come down here, hold shift and click on this X, and we're going to make this just we're going to make it black and then decrease the opacity about halfway. Now what we want to do is create that curving line in the middle of this object, but first we want to turn this object into a path by going to path and object to path. Now we're going to need our Bezier pen by hitting the letter B on our keyboard. Hold Control, click, and just drag a line all the way out to the other side of this rectangle. Click and then hit Enter. Now we want to create a curve on this line. So we're going to go to the Edit Paths by Nodes tool, and we're going to move it up here until you see that hand. Click and drag it up over here, and then on the other side we're going to click and drag it down, and you want a nice smooth flowing curve, you know, just like that. And it doesn't need to be such a severe curve, you know, that's not really important, you know, it's entirely up to you how curvy you want this line to be. And now what you want to do is turn this line into a path by going to Path, Stroke to Path. Now you need your selector tool, so just hit S on the keyboard, and you want to duplicate this line. So hold Control, click the letter D, then hold Control, click on this and drag it down. And then while holding Control still, just hit the letter D and do the same thing. And you're going to want 4 of these lines total. So just do that one last time, click and drag that down. And now what you want to do is you want to make sure that these are spaced apart evenly. And how you do that, you can just click and drag over all of them so you have all of them selected. And now you can go to your Align and Distribute menu, and right here where it says make vertical gaps between objects equal, just click on that. And now as you can see, these lines are equally spaced apart. Now what you want to do is you want to make these 4 lines a union by going up here to Path, clicking Union, and now we want to cut into the rectangle that we created. So to do that, we're going to hold Shift, click on the rectangle, go to Path, click Difference, and now you can see that those lines are cut into the rectangle. We want to break them apart so we can isolate these 3 objects that we just created. So let's go to Path, click Break Apart, and now we can click off the object, and we get rid of this object here and this one here. So with them selected, just hit Delete, click on this other one, hit Delete, and now what we want to do is we want to create a gradient on each of these 3 objects. So with the top one selected, we can go to our Fill and Stroke menu and make sure the Fill tab is selected. And you want to go over here and select the Linear Gradient tool. And what I want to do is have it blending from top to bottom. So with that selected, we're going to go to our Gradient tool by coming over here, and you can click on that or just hit the letter G on the keyboard to select your Gradient tool. And over here where it is white, I'm going to click and drag this right around to the middle of that object, and then grab the other node, and then if you hold Control, you can make it go perfectly vertical. And let's go ahead and uncheck our enable snapping, because it's going to interfere with what we're trying to do here. So hold Control, come back to this bottom one, and we want to do that, and then move this one back up so you can see that whole design right there. We can even move this down. Actually, let's bring this at an angle so you can kind of see that gradient a little bit better throughout the whole design. So don't hold Control while you're doing this, because you want to have that free reign. Alright, now with that gradient tool still selected, go ahead and click on the object below, go over here to your fill and paint menu or fill and stroke menu and click linear gradient for that one, and you're going to do the exact same thing for that one. So first let's click this side. We're going to move it over here towards the middle, grab the other one, and then click and drag it down so it is just like the one that we just did. So we're going to do that, and then I think we need to drag this one up just a little bit, and that looks pretty good right there. Now click on the third one, go over here to linear gradient, and do the exact same thing. So do that, move this one down here, and then drag this one up a little bit. And that is pretty much it. Now what we want to do is we want to cut out shapes from this gradient that are the exact same shapes as the Olympic rings. So what we need to do is you get your selector tool, just hit S on the keyboard. We're going to click and drag over the Olympics logo that we created, and we want to duplicate that. So hold Control, hit the letter D, and we want to make that a union so it thinks it's one object. So go up here to Path, click Union, and you can tell that it worked because they'll all be the same color. Now holding Control, let's click and drag this down, and then just kind of center it as best as you can on this gradient design we just created. And now we're going to hold Shift and click on the gradient design. Actually, let's group the gradients together. So click each of the gradients by holding Shift and then clicking each one. And if you hold Control and hit the letter G on the keyboard, it will group them together. Now it'll be a little bit easier to work with. So let's click back on our Olympics design here, hold Shift, click on the gradient design. Now we're going to go to Object, Clip, and Set. And what you can see is it created that cool design right here. And what we want to do is hold Control, click, and drag this straight up so it's overlapping, but we need to enable snapping again so it will line up perfectly on our original logo. So now you have that cool gradient design that's within those rings. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is create that drop shadow that I had in my design. So how we're going to do that is we're going to select the entire design, and then we're going to hold Shift and then click on that gradient area to deselect that. And what we want to do is duplicate these 5 rings by holding Control and hitting the letter D. And let's go ahead and group them together by holding Control and hitting G on the keyboard. Now we want to make them black, so come down here, click black on the palette, and now we're gonna click and drag them down and to the right just a little bit. And let's go ahead and uncheck our snapping so it doesn't interfere with what we're trying to do here. So that looks pretty good right there. And now we want to add a blur to that by coming to our fill and stroke menu, and then just click the up arrow to give it like a 1. And we want to drop the opacity down to about 80. And that looks pretty good right there. And the last step that we need to do is put the drop shadow behind the logo. With it already selected, we're going to come up here and click the button that says lower selection to bottom end. And that is it. If you zoom in on it, you can see you've got our new Olympics design with the drop shadow underneath it. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Leave me in the comments below any other suggestions for designs that you want to see how to do. Don't forget to check out my other YouTube channel, DC Best Ever. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you're enjoying my videos. And hit that bell next to the subscribe button so you know anytime I post a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Take care.